Malcolm's assassination, King's assassination.
Gotcha.
The U.S. government is responsible for killing the former president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez. They killed Arafat. These are some of their unofficial assassinations. They do not make mistakes.
Hello and welcome to Hustle Over Everything podcast. This is a podcast where we receive stories, tips, and tactics from entrepreneurs who have done it. I'm Alex, the owner of the show, and today we have a special show for you. We have the legend himself, King Consciousness, Dr. Umar. What's up, man? How are you doing?
Pan-Africanism. Glad to be with you. Shout out to Toronto, Canada. One love.
Most definitely. So I want to start off getting right into it. Mm-hmm. What were you doing when you heard that there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump?
I believe my mother and I were watching a movie together on the television when it came through yesterday afternoon, I guess it was. Mm-hmm. And so immediately, I conducted a political analysis on the situation. And my political analysis led me to a couple of early theories on the so-called attempted assassination. A couple of things. Number one, when they tried to assassinate presidents, and although Donald Trump is not in office, he once was. And having ever been in office, you are guaranteed Secret Service protection at a level that supersedes other dignitaries. When they make assassinations, they don't miss. State-sponsored assassinations are extremely well-planned and organized, and they leave nothing to chance. In almost every state-sponsored assassination that this country has carried out, there were always backup shooters. If we look at the good Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his state-sponsored assassination, probably the most well-orchestrated in American history, the primary shooter was a expert marksman from the Memphis Police Department. Mm-hmm. The backup shooters were Green Berets of the U.S. military. And the backup shooters rarely have knowledge of who the primary shooter is. They're normally under the assumption that they are the primary shooter because nothing could be left to chance. When we look at the 6 presidential assassination attempts in American history, you had President Abraham Lincoln, which was April of 1865. You have President Garfield, which was July 2nd, I believe, of 1881. You have President McKinley, which was in 1901. And then you have President John F. Kennedy, November 22nd, 1963. And then you have President Ronald Reagan, which took place on May 30th, 1981, I believe. And then you had what happened yesterday, former President Donald Trump on July the 13th of 2023. What is odd about these 6 presidential assassination attempts, 2 of which were unsuccessful, 4 that were successful? 3 of them were assassinated on a Friday, and 3 of them were assassinated or attempted to be assassinated on a Saturday. Nobody was shot on a Sunday. Nobody was shot on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. No one was shot on a Thursday. It was only Friday and Saturday. Donald Trump's attempted assassination was on a Saturday. Is it just a coincidence that President Ronald Reagan's assassination attempt was also on a Saturday? Is it a coincidence that both Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump were neither traditional politicians? Ronald Reagan came over from Hollywood. Donald Trump came over from the business world. Is it also a coincidence that neither man was extremely popular, so to speak, when they were running for president initially, and the assassination attempts endeared them to many people who otherwise would not have supported them? In all of the 4 presidents who were assassinated, 3 of them were assassinated on a Friday. Lincoln was assassinated on a Friday. John F. Kennedy was assassinated on a Friday. William McKinley was assassinated on a Friday. Only President Garfield, July 2nd, 1881, was assassinated on a Saturday as were the attempts made on Reagan and Trump. Are these coincidences? So what do I believe? I believe that this was not an attempt to take Donald Trump's life. I believe this was an attempt to endear Donald Trump to the American people so that the Republican National Committee and Convention could continue to carry out the martyr narrative that they have been using ever since Donald Trump was charged and convicted of a felony. So they are painting a picture to the American people that suggests the power structure doesn't want Donald Trump in office. And because he's being viewed as a martyr, it is increasing his black vote. It is increasing his white vote. And this latest debacle, if you would, scam that I would probably say was also done by the American white power structure to further ingratiate Donald Trump to American voters who otherwise would not be thinking of casting a ballot for him. This was not an assassination attempt, excuse me. This was not an assassination attempt. This was a publicity campaign.
Okay. What's the significance of the Friday and Saturday? What do you think that significance is?
Well, one thing, we know that security tends to be laxed on Friday and Saturday. There's less bureaucratic activity on a Friday or Saturday. All of your government workers, mostly outside of essential workers, are home on Friday and Saturday. Basically, you have less eyes, you have less supervision, less surveillance, and less security. So whatever you're carrying it out, it's more effective to be done on Friday and Saturday. Those are the 2 days that a lot of folks, are thinking about something other than their job, than their work. And of course, Sunday is church. And very little takes place on Sunday out of respect for, religion. So Friday and Saturdays are the best days to carry out an assassination. And I would also argue, to underscore my position, that this was a publicity stunt to garner votes for Donald Trump by the power structure. And when I say power structure, I don't just mean the Republicans, because America is not ran by Democrats and Republicans. America is ran by the National Security Agency. America is ran by the Council on Foreign Relations. America is ran by the Trilateral Commission. America is ran by the Federal Reserve. America is ran by the Bilderbergers, the Rothschilds, the Morgans, the Stanleys. That's who America is run by. The Democrats and Republicans are simply their arms and fingers. They are their feet. But the ultimate decisions are made by the shadow government that includes, but is not limited to, those secret bodies that I just mentioned. Let's go to Barack Obama. When President Barack Obama declared his run for president, and even during his reelection and during his entire campaign of the first term and during the second term as well, his life was threatened multiple times. President Obama received more death threats, I believe, than any president in American history, running and sitting. Not a single attempt on his life. There's no way you're going to convince me that someone who's receiving actual threats on their life doesn't get a single attempt in 2 terms and Donald Trump gets one. I'm not buying that. This was a stunt, and the power structure's name is written all over it.
What do you think about the 2 people that lost their lives?
Collateral damage. America allowed Pearl Harbor to be bombed. They knew the Japanese were coming, and they let it happen because they needed to justify their involvement in World War II. America, any government, not just America, but we're talking about America. If you study the behavior of nations, it becomes necessary to sacrifice some of your own people in order to gain a larger reward. In other words, you might lose the battle on purpose so you can win the war. So I'm not surprised that there was only one casualty. America has killed way more of her people than that. Look at all the soldiers who died fighting Al-Qaeda, so to speak. Look at all the soldiers who died in Afghanistan and Iraq and Kuwait for oil and drugs and access to international markets. They didn't die for liberty or justice or democracy. They died for power and privilege. So America has a history. All governments are corrupt on the planet, okay? And all of them basically have a history of sacrificing their own lives in order to achieve their selfish ends.
So how do you think America is looking to the international community?
Assassination attempts are not foreign I don't think to any country. You know, our brothers and sisters on the African soil, they probably experienced the most assassination attempts per capita because of the general weak governmental structure that exists and the strong oversight and control that France, America, Great Britain, Belgium, Germany, and other countries has on Africa. That's what allows so many assassination attempts to take place on African soil, plus the fact that the ego of the Negro doesn't give us enough patience to wait for the next opportunity to run for office. We want people unseated right now, so we kill them in order to replace them. But with that being said, I don't think it's a shock because there hasn't been an attempt since 1981, Ronald Reagan. And I tell you what else is very interesting. The time between the assassination of President McKinley in 1881 and the assassination of President John F. Kennedy was 62 years. The space between JFK's assassination and Trump's assassination attempt was 62 years. Mm-hmm. I don't think that is a coincidence. Mm-hmm. That almost the same amount of time passed between McKinley and JFK's assassinations and JFK's and Trump fraudulent assassination. And it's been just under 25 years since Ronald Reagan's presidential assassination attempt. So I'm just saying all that to say that there's a structure to this, there's a rhythm to this, there's a system to this, and people who really study political science. I was a political science major. Yeah. Okay, so people really study political science. They'll see that if this was just some crazed person, first of all, if you understand how the Secret Service operates, how thoroughly they canvass and case out a situation. For example, most presidents have, what do we want to call them? Replicas of themselves. There's dummies for every president, right? Yep. I think they have about a dozen of them. People who look just like Donald Trump. They give them plastic surgery to look like Donald Trump. They dress them up and they send them into places where they think there's high threats to see if, in fact, you know, there is a credible threat taking place at that time. So there's no way any shooter, if the Secret Service did their job, and I'm sure they did because, again, he's a past president, possibly soon to be again. There's no way the Secret Service different canvassed that out. There's no way the FBI and CIA didn't do their job. There's no way Homeland Security had a breakdown. There's too many governmental agencies involved in the protection of the President of the United States, especially on domestic soil. Especially on domestic soil. There's no way this could happen if you really understand how thorough the United States government is in carrying out its responsibilities to protect the lives of American presidents. This was done by the power structure. And I believe it was done to ingratiate Donald Trump to the voters. I do not believe that his life is in jeopardy. If we look at Ronald Reagan, after he was shot, there was never again, to my knowledge, an attempt on his life. Mm-hmm. It was purely a publicity stunt. If they wanted Donald Trump gone... You
think Reagan was a publicity stunt as well?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because he didn't die. And they didn't come back to kill him again.
Gotcha.
They don't make mistakes. Malcolm's assassination, King's assassination. Gotcha. The U.S. government is responsible for killing the former president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez. They killed Arafat. These are some of their unofficial assassinations. They do not make mistakes. If they want you dead, you die. Take the JFK assassination. The single bullet theory, even though that's the most popular theory of JFK's assassination in history, is completely incorrect. People who were there said that there was more than one shooter. There was more than one shooter because they leave nothing up to chance. If the power structure wanted Donald Trump dead, he'd be dead. He's not going anywhere.
Gotcha.